we're moving on to Doug Wonstall from Regeneration Earth, who is going to talk more specifically about offsetting carbon within the UK. Doug, welcome.
Hi, very good. Thank you very much for asking me along this afternoon. Okay, good stuff. Well, just start clicking away. So, my name is Doug Wonstall. I'm a farmer based in just outside Ashford in Kent, and I'm the founder of the Regeneration Earth and project lead on the UK Carbon Code of Conduct. We've got a family farming business here near Ashford, and we produce free-range eggs, we produce arable crops, and we produce beef. You've gone too quick. Don't worry. And beef as well. Bank Farm is the home of the egg machine. If you haven't heard of the egg machine, then I have failed in my promotion. But I've also established a series of worm farms and black soldier fly. We're about to, start a black soldier fly larvae system on the farm to convert, food waste into a high quality compost and animal feed. And then on top of that, we've got 3 wedding venues. I have to say, I don't get involved with everything day to day. Otherwise, I'd be a terribly busy chap. Next slide, please, Flo. So as we've heard many times today, and as you hear all the time, we're in a climate emergency. In a little over 150 years, humanity has managed to discover, extract and burn as much of the CO2 that Mother Nature had tucked away using very natural systems for millennia. And in the same time, and although it might not feel like it at times, and especially at the moment, economies and the global standard of living has improved at an accelerated rate. But at what cost has that been? So, as a society, we've all become very reliant on, the use of hydrocarbons. Rampant consumerism has gripped developed economies, and that's one of the biggest reasons we are in this climate emergency now. And many farmers have actually forgotten how to manage the land that they farm in harmony with nature. At the moment, we're simply fighting it all the time with chemistry rather than working with the natural processes. And consumers have become wasteful. I've actually switched my camera off, but I'm sitting here as a man who's a little bit overweight, and if I eat too many calories, that's a waste. That's waste, but that's not the only waste that I create. We create packaging waste and all of this. Buying too much stuff it's just terribly wasteful. It's had a terrible impact on the planet. However, it's not too late if we act now. The economy and every facet of it needs to decarbonise. People need to consume and waste less. There needs to be a new paradigm. It must include a move to reuse, renew, recycle, eat less, eat better, eat seasonal, and of course, eat local. And we need to draw down the damaging. It's not enough just to reduce our carbon footprint. That's a great thing to do. We must all do it. We must all do everything we can. I drive around in my little electric van, and I do everything I can to reduce my own personal carbon footprint. But we actually need to take the carbon from the atmosphere and put it back into the soils, into materials, and into living things. Next slide, please, or next point, sorry. And remember that Mother Nature's been doing this forever. We talk about, technical solutions and, innovative solutions. Well, actually, just use plants. Let's use plants and nature to do what they've done for a long time. We just need to give it a bit of a helping hand. If we don't, it'll be our era that destroys the planet beyond all recognition. And if we're not careful, we may end up making ourselves extinct. Next slide, please. Next slide. That's it. Thank you. So, what are carbon offsets? So, they are an carbon offset should be a mechanism by which a company with residual CO2 emissions can pay someone else to remove that CO2 from the atmosphere. And one real offset should be 1 real ton of CO2 removed from the atmosphere, and you should be able to see the project where that removal took place, how it took place, when it took place, and every detail about that project. But all too often, unfortunately, this system is abused, with offsets being sold from dubious projects with little or no approval or verification system. And the quality of the verification of the project is key to any offset. and it must be provided with transparency of information and a credible approval process. All offsets sold on the informal market are coming under far greater scrutiny, and with some consumers, you could get to a stage where consumers start to demand their money back from less scrupulous operators. Next point, that's it, thank you. Oh. Can you click on? That's it. And offsets are not a quick fix to reach net zero. We've heard this many times before. You should not simply attempt to buy your way to neutrality. But offsets are an important part of the mix towards net zero. And the UK Climate Change Committee has stated that it doesn't want UK companies to become reliant on the overseas offset market. And so there's a real opportunity in the UK for local projects. And all companies over 250 employees now have to carbon account. But rest assured, this will be, this will happen. This will be a requirement for every company, in the coming years. And every company should be working, and every person should be working towards reducing their emissions as far as they can. And often you've got to remember that often, lower emissions, lower carbon is lower cost. It means it's good business. It's often very good business to reduce your carbon footprint. But every company will have residual emissions that they can't reduce past a certain point. And this is where offsetting can play a vital role in achieving net zero. Only buy offsets from a known and credible source, and if possible, buy it from a local project. If you can go and touch and see and feel the project that your offsets have come from, that will give you and your employees and your customers real comfort that what they're doing, what they've invested in is real. So how did we get to this point? So we began designing this process in 2015 when I did a Nuffield study, which happened to coincide with the Paris climate talks. And it became obvious to me that land management was going to play a key role in the reversal of climate change and biodiversity collapse. So Regeneration Earth is set up as a project developer, and then we design a range of project types to sequester, draw down that atmospheric CO2 from the atmosphere. And these include everything from whole-scale move to regenerative agriculture. It includes specific carbon crops, high biomass crops that again draw down lots of CO2. Biodiversity habitat creation, we're getting a lot of interest in actually people wanting to do more than just draw down carbon. They want to help biodiversity as well. And if you can add the revival of birds, bees and butterflies to a carbon project, what's not to like? We're looking at Paulonia timber production, which is a novel hardwood species which grows incredibly quickly. And then we also look at green energy for schools to reduce their reliance on other sources of energy. But it quickly became apparent that all these projects were great and they're really credible, they work, they're verified. But what we needed was a formal way to approve and verify these projects. So we looked around the world, and we've heard about just recently about the gold standard and VCS. There was the UN Clean Development Mechanism, but that kind of fell by the wayside. In this country, in the UK, we've only got the Woodland Carbon Code and the Peatland Carbon Code, and the gold standard and VCS just simply not fit for the UK conditions, and the others are highly sector specific. So we, along with a bunch of other stakeholders, and there's a growing community of people now, which is getting really exciting, we developed the UK Carbon Code of Conduct. So what is the Carbon Code of Conduct? So it's a robust set of standards that sets out the procedure for project approval, measurement, reporting and verification of all carbon projects. All projects have to adhere to the central set of standards and then use sector-specific MRV protocols. So MRV, measure, reporting, verification, depending on what the type of land use activity is. And the aim was to produce carbon offsets that capital markets, governments, big corporations would accept as a fungible product, i.e. something that had a value and could be bought and could be sold. And a single farm could have as many different items registered and approved as they choose. So we have farms that have new woodland creation, wetland creation, agroforestry, regenerative agriculture, biomass cropping, all approved under a single project. And the UK Carbon Code is now a standalone, independent, not-for-profit entity. There is a technical panel that manages the version cycles, and the aim of it is to democratise carbon, to ensure that land managers stay in control of the carbon that they sequester and the biodiversity habitats that they create. Because what we're concerned about is the large retailers in particular grabbing hold of the carbon that's sequestered on a farm and using it within their own supply chain, whereas the UK Carbon Code gets a farm to net zero first and actually certifies that status in order that they can sell their produce as net zero. Next slide, please. And when we're looking at projects for sequestering CO2, think outside the box. There's lots of tools at our disposal. Next point, please. And it won't surprise you that there's a massive disconnect between the aims of government and reality. Government wants 30,000 hectares of trees planted a year in the UK. Last year, I think it was just over 2,000. This year, it's looking like a little bit more than that, but it's still a long way from the aims. You talk to the likes of the Woodland Trust and Forestry Commission, and they want traditional trees, and I get that completely. Of course, I do. But one of the reasons that we're not seeing that large-scale plantation of trees is because actually traditional woodlands don't make any money for the landowner, and that's a critical point. 1 hectare of newly planted traditional woodland will sequester about 400 tonnes of CO2 by their 100th year. And of course, like I said, it'll sequester loads of CO2. There's nothing more magnificent than a 100-year-old oak for the number of different species you'll see living on and within it and under it. But a traditional woodland won't produce any food or any usable timber. Whereas farming regeneratively, on this farm here, we've actually sequestered an average of 5 tonnes per hectare per year over the last 5 years. That's 500 tonnes per hectare over the same 100 years, and we're still producing food. Next point, please. Yeah. So, and there is a limit to how much CO2 soils can sequester, but there's no limit to the amount of soil that we can build. And if we plant novel species of trees, and this is where we want people to think out the box a little bit, is actually a plantation, a hectare of Paulownia trees will sequester 2,500 tonnes of CO2. I think that's 5 times the rate of a traditional woodland. And habitat creation can be an amazing way to sequester CO2 and help reverse biodiversity collapse. Next slide, thank you. So what's the process to project approval? So the first thing you do is you engage a UK Carbon Code approved project developer. There's a growing number of them. Regeneration Earth is one of those companies. What we do is we establish a project host's current net CO2 position. We take soil baseline tests to establish where their soils are at, how much soil organic carbon they've got in their soils. And then we design a project. With the landowner. Then we agree an annual monitoring plan, and then the project is forwarded to the UK Carbon Code for approval. The project developer has to predict how many CO2 credits offsets can be issued from the project activities, and then we establish how many of those offsets are required internally to get the project host to net zero. And then the remainder of those offsets are forwarded onto a blockchain-enabled carbon tracking system, registry and marketplace. So design your project. So have we done that one? Oh no. I think I've repeated the slide almost. So we look at different ways we look at all of the everything at the landowner's disposal, and we decide on the measures to be taken, the management practices that need to change or be adopted. Additionality and permanence of CO2 sequestration are key to success, and it's all of our projects are long term. 25 years is the norm, but it's in blocks of 5, and we can novate agreements where a landowner's circumstances may change. But what we do is, once the project plan template is agreed, we've agreed the annual monitoring and reporting plan, and then the project's approved by the UK Carbon Code. Next slide, please. So and then what happens is the credits, the offsets are forwarded onto the registry. There are discount factors applied depending on the type of project, and they're put into a buffer storage. And the credits, the offsets, remain the property of the project host at all time, and they can sell them whenever they choose. They don't have to sell them at all. They can keep them for their own net zero ambitions, and it's up to them to decide on the price they're willing to sell them at. But of course, there is a market dynamic at play here. So ongoing monitoring and verification. There's an annual light touch visit by the project developer and an annual monitoring report that's completed and sent to the Carbon Code for approval. The idea of the annual visit is to give the project host and the developer a chance to discuss, how things are going. If they're on a journey to regenerative agriculture, what more can we do this year to further your ambitions to get to, well beyond net zero, to be sequestering more and more CO2. And it's a really inclusive, partnership approach that's taken. And then every 5 years, additional things like soil tests are taken to make sure that, the soil organic matters are going up as we expect. And there is an opportunity to put more or take some out of the buffer storage, depending on how the project is going. So what does Regeneration Earth do then? So what do we offer landowners and consumers? So really what we do is we identify hosts for quality projects in all areas of the UK, and we'll design and help that project get through the approval process. And then what we do is we match project hosts with carbon offset consumers to find suitable local projects to support. And then what we do is we enact the sale between the two parties. Sorry, it wasn't an easy one to follow. Sorry, Flo. And that's the end of my presentation. So any questions at all? Oh, Flo, I can't hear you.
Apologies. Question from Romney Marsh. Chrissy, if you're an online web business, is there an approved plant a tree scheme, accreditation funding stream that we can sign up to that is recognised, i.e. every sales amount goes towards planting a tree?
Yeah, so actually as part of our system, we've linked the sale of carbon offsets to, you can use a QR code. So every time you buy, a bar of Romney Marsh sheep soap, you could have a QR code on there that shows the consumer where where the project was, how the project was developed, and so on and so forth. So we can link a sale to a carbon offset through a very simple system. I didn't describe it very well, but I'm not the techie.
And Jason asked how busy you are, Doug.
Yeah, quite busy. Yeah, why? What does he want?
I've no idea. Gives no further detail. How long have you been going with Regeneration Earth, and how quickly do you feel it's growing? Because I imagine there's quite a bit of interest for this.
Yeah, there is. So we've been going we started actually trading in 2021. So we're a relatively new company. The UK Carbon Code has been out now for 6 months. And we're getting a lot of interest. We're getting a lot of interest from from people wanting to develop projects, and we're getting a lot of interest from consumers. I mean, we had an inquiry yesterday for 160,000 tons of offsets. Now that's a lot. That's a lot of land. That's a lot of projects to find and set up. They don't want it today. They're giving us time to find the land and to establish the projects. But that gives you a feel for just how quickly things are moving and how quickly things are growing.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the other stakeholders that were involved in getting the UK standard together?
Yeah, of course. So there's a group. So we put an initial working group together, and this included everybody from the finance sector, tech sector. We've got ecologists. We've got academics involved. We're working very closely with the University of Kent to help us give academic credence to our claims. They're doing a lot of our life cycle analysis work. So there's a large and growing group. So we're working with an organisation called Carbon Metrics, which do all of our on-farm projects carbon footprinting. We're working with a company called Energize who work with companies who want to calculate their footprint, and it's just growing and growing and growing and growing all the time.
Right. Wishing you the best of success. I think you will become even more busier than you are already. If there's no further questions, then I would like to move on. Thank you very much, Doug.